Welcome everyone to Microsoft 365 UK user group. This is our second online event. And so a bit about myself. I'm Chirag Patel. I one of the organizer here for the Microsoft 365 UK user group. In fact, I'm probably the only one I would say, instead of saying one of them. But yeah, I'm also a community speaker as well, so I tend to speak at various events. And just recently been awarded Office and Apps Services MVP. And for living, I'm a Microsoft 365 consultant, covering deployment, migrations, or even simply just enhancing business value to the existing investment. So there's my contact details. Feel free to come through to me for any events or anything like that around the user group meetings. techchirag.com is the best way to get through to me. Been in IT for about 20 odd years, doing various kind of roles. Started off as SharePoint administrator and DBA, and that's obviously evolved over the years into Office 365 and Microsoft 365, covering a plethora of tech around that. So welcome once again to Microsoft 365 UK user group. And then in the coming months, we've got some more meetings planned. So in particular, next month on the 12th of August, we've got Thomas and Jasper from Belgium and Netherlands. And then we've got obviously Peter from UK and Laura as well. And then in October, we've got Joanne and Leslie Crook as well. So we've got some variety of sessions planned, both for IT Pro as well as for business. And so, feel free to register. Those are the links on the right hand side. meetup.com/M365UK is the URL to just go and get more info on the sessions that's coming up in the few months. So hopefully you can connect to M365 UK Twitter account for any updates, as well as last month's sessions that we recorded, as well as the slides are all available, as well as for this particular meeting today will be available as well. So the session will be recorded, and so will be available to you hopefully within the 48 hours by this Friday. So we have great speakers today. We've got Kirti Prajapati from India, and we've got Albert Hoitingh from the Netherlands as well. So two very different topics. The first one is on Microsoft Teams development to really get started and building the bot. So Kirti is going to show and tell us how that's done. And so hopefully I'm looking forward to that. It'll be very interesting to see. And obviously then we'll take a 10-minute odd break depending on how we do with the time side of things. So we're kind of flexible around that. Kind of just get yourself stretch legs or get a cup of tea or something. And then we'll kind of resume 5:10 here UK time with Albert's session on everything about sensitivity labels, especially in the recent times. It's kind of gone general availability or sort of things. And so, yeah, with that, we'll kind of get started, but please do post your questions or even feedback or any ideas or thoughts you may have on the Q&A section of this Teams live event. And then obviously we'll monitoring that as well. So in the end, hopefully if you have any questions, then Kirti will be there as well to answer those as well. Okay, so let's get started with the session one, getting started with your teams. Kirti, over to you. Take it away, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chirag. Yeah, let me share my screen and please confirm if you can see the screen.
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, fine. Okay. Hello and welcome to the Microsoft 365 UK user group July 2020 edition. And I want to thank Chirag and Microsoft 365 UK user group for having me and allowing me to share my thoughts on getting started with your teams. And I would like to thank everyone for joining and investing your time to learn and share new things with the help of this community event. So today I'm going to discuss about getting started with your teams, how your team generator for Microsoft Teams can be used to create some kind of tabs, bots, and other components which are available for the developer community. So I will try to explain as much as I can in the next hour or so regarding this. And before I jump into that, I just want to give you a better introduction who I am. So myself, Kirti Prajapati, and I am a Microsoft MVP and SharePoint architect working as an independent consultant. And I have been working with SharePoint since 2007. So it is more than a decade working with SharePoint now. And I'm also a Microsoft certified technical specialist. And by trade, I would like to call myself a SharePoint consultant and developer. So, however, I would also call myself an evangelist because I would like to talk about and encourage the usage of SharePoint with the interested people or within the community. And along with that, I have been speaking in local and international community events and conferences. And I'm also passionate to share my knowledge in all possible ways. So I evangelize SharePoint on my blogs as well. And I'm also associated with some kind of ebooks writing and providing corporate training as well. And apart from that, I'm also an organizer of Ahmedabad SharePoint user group and organizing events like Microsoft 365 Global Development Bootcamp, then Global Power Platform Bootcamp, SharePoint Saturdays, and of course organizing some free workshops just to boost the freshers developers and build a strong community. And as an ambassador of the AOS community, I'm very passionate to grow and build a strong local community for SharePoint, Office 365, and Azure. And if you would like to get a hold of me, then my contact details are over there on the right hand side. So we can be in touch on any social media platform. Yeah, so this is all about me. And now for today's session, I have like a very basic introduction kind of points I'm trying to cover up. So as you know that nowadays the usage and the adoption of Microsoft Teams is increasing day by day, and organizations or companies are looking for a Microsoft Teams solutions which can be extended and enhance the capabilities for better collaboration. So to develop a certain kind of solutions and make it easy to use and available as a centralized solution for the organization, we have Yeoman Generator. And today I'm going to discuss about why you need Yeoman Generator, your teams, and what are the prerequisites required. So as a developer, to set up a development environment, what should be there before you start the development, and how to use it. Like there are different set of commands available. So what commands as a developer you need to use, and then I'll explain two components, one for the tabs development and another one for the bots development in the demo. So first I'll start with why your teams. So we can build teams applications using SharePoint framework as well. So if anyone from the developer community, then they might know that SharePoint framework web part, using SharePoint framework web part, we can create a common solution which can run on Office 365 and Microsoft Teams as well. But the only thing we can do with this SPFX is you can develop only client-side tabs. There is no other option. You can create bot connectors, anything like that. That is not possible with the SPFX generator. So, but using Yeoman Generator, we can build a lot of other things. So, especially if you have those kind of business processes that might require server-side compilation or a kind of rendering and something you want to hide your business logic, then you can build a server-side and client-side tabs. For example, SharePoint Online Provider hosted web part. That's one example. And along with that, in the Teams application, we have the bots, connectors, outgoing webhooks, and a lot of other things. So that I can say the power of this is it combines all those into its seamless application, and the generator teams, Yeoman Generator, that scaffolds Microsoft Teams apps project based on TypeScript, Node.js, and React with the support for Microsoft Teams tab. So that includes support for configuring tabs as SharePoint web parts or full page application. Then it includes the support for single sign-on tabs. Then we could have this Microsoft bot framework bots. So there are two options, like it is based on bot framework 4.7, and it supports for calling either audio or video. And then Microsoft Teams message extensions and actions. So using that, multiple configuration options using adaptive cars, task modules, and static parameters will be there. And it also support for configuration and settings as well. And then we have the Microsoft Teams and Outlook connectors. And last, we can create outgoing webhooks. So before this is just basic information that why your Teams is useful and why a developer community should go with this if they want to create any component from this. So before that, the developer should know that what are the prerequisites to start the development. So first is like you have to install 3 packages using npm. So those are yo, gulp-cli, and TypeScript. So this is the command that npm install yo gulp-cli TypeScript. Using that, you can install these 3 packages, and after that, you have to install the Yeoman Generator. So for Yeoman Generator, we have the 2 versions. So this is one. This one is the simple one, and if you want to go with the latest and greatest feature for this was the Yeoman Generator, then you have to use npm install generator -teams @preview -- global. So these are the prerequisites. It's the basic prerequisites as a developer you need to install before you start development for this Microsoft Teams Yeoman Generator. Yeah, so now let's jump into the demo directly. So in the demo, I'm going to explain how to create tab. The first example is tabs, and then I'll jump into that. And along with that, I'll also explain that how the project structure scaffold when you are creating any tabs or any kind of bot solution using Yeoman Generator. And then I'll explain you how to create bots. So for this session, I had 2 examples. So let's start with the first, the tabs development. So here I have created one sample for demo, but I'll create another one. So first you have to go into the physical location where you want to store your, or when you want to have your solution. So for example, I am just creating.
Hi, Kirti. We can only see your slides.
Oh, I have shared my Visual Studio Code. Isn't it available?
I can only see your slides layout and the demo slide.
Okay, let me share the screen again. Okay, now?
It's just loading. Oh yes, that's better. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Chirag, for letting me know. Okay, so I was talking about like I'm going to create a project to create the Microsoft Teams tab. So first you have to go into your physical location where you want to copy or create your solution. So I'm just creating the new directory folder at this location called md tab -2, then cd tab, and then I just need to use the yo teams command. So it will ask me a few questions, and I have to provide answers on that, and based on that it will create my project. So what is your solution name? So I mostly, in most of the cases, I'll go with the default one. I'll use the same folder path. I'll use the Microsoft Teams app project, same name. Yeah, and here there are a choice for selecting the version. So if you want to go with the version 1.5, you can just use the up and down arrow key and you can change the version. So for now, I'll go with the version 1.6. Then here there is no need to provide the Microsoft partner ID. So as of now, I will keep This is a blank and it is optional, it is not required. Now here, from here, you can select what type of project you want to create. So for now, I'll go with a tab development. So I'll just select the tabs, and if you want to create bots, then you just have to use the up and down arrow key, and you can select whatever the component you want to build. So for now, I'll go with the tabs, and this is the URL is created by default. So I will explain that how to change this URL when we jump into the bots development. But as of now, I'll go with this, the default one for the tabs. And then for the rest of the questions, I'll select no. We do not want to go with the loading indicator, so select no. Then test framework. So the beauty of this generator is it also allows us to have some kind of initial test, and we can also include the test framework if you want, but now, for now, I'm just selecting the no. Then I do not want to use Azure Application Insights, so no. Yeah, and this is most important. So most of the times, we might have the long name for this tab. So make sure that it should not be more than 16 characters. So for now, for me, it is like 9 characters. So I'll go with that too. And there are two options if you want to make it your tab with a configurable or personal, so static. So I'll go with the configurable, and I want to use in a team only, not in a group chat. So I'll select the first one, and then I do not want to go with the single sign-on. I do not want to use on SharePoint Online. Yeah, now it start the creating the project, and it will take a while to create and scaffold all the required files and folders for this tabs solution. Once it is done, we can open that solution, and I'll explain that how the project structure is defined, and it is very useful or should be understandable by all the developers if you are comparing with the SPFX client-side web part. So we are good to go. Now I'm just typing code space dot, and it will open my Visual Studio Code with this scaffolding solution. So in the solution, you can see the folders and files are very much similar to the solution which we are creating using SPFX generator. So first, I'll just wanted to bring few things, like we have the gulf file.js. So this file contains the different gulf tasks. You can modify this one if you need to add additional tasks. So these are the basic tasks involved in the file, but it is also helpful for us that you can change anytime. Then we have the gulf.config.js file, and this file contains constant and settings for the gulf task that is introduced in version 2.9.0. And we have the readme file, readme.md. It is automatically generated file to help you get started. So everything is written over if you want to get some insights that how it works and how to execute this solution. And then most important, we have the environment folder where you can have this replaceable strings that will be used throughout your project and make it easier for you to move projects in between different environments. So that this will help to change these values, the key and pair. For example, Microsoft App ID and password. So I will explain that how we can have these values when I'll explain about this bots development. And then we have the tsconfig. We have two tsconfig.json file, one for this TypeScript configuration file for the server side TypeScript components, and the another one is this for the client side TypeScript components. So the beauty of this Yeoman generator is you can have the server side and client side code available, or you can write anything, because we can also write the SharePoint provider hosted app using that. And then we have this deploy.cfd file where files are used if you use automatic deployment to Microsoft Azure. So this is the basic structure that and files we have when we are scaffolding the solution. Now in the SRC folder, there are two folders. If you look as a SPFX web part developer, then we don't have this app and manifest folder in the SRC folder. We have only web part folder. So here the manifest folder contains two two required logos, and the manifest file uses replaceable tokens. So we have the replaceable tokens here, so you can change it anytime. And then we have the app folder. So app folder contains the actual code, files, and folders for your application. In the root of the app folder, there are two files, the server.ts and teams app components.ts. So the server.ts file is the file that creates the web server express, and that helps us to load all the components you define in your project using Express MS Teams, MS Teams host using the npm package. And then each component require a server-side implementation, and that will get its own folder under the app folder. So if we can have the separate app folders for all the server-side components. So this is a basic introduction of how the project is scaffold. Now the question is, where should I write my code? So we have that render method where I'm going to update a line of code. So you just select apps, scripts folder, then go to tabs, your solution name, and select tabs2.tab.tsx file, and we have the render method here. So I'm just changing this line. Welcome to M365. July 2020 edition, and I'm just saving it. Now the question is, how should I build this solution and get the information that how it will look like when it renders on the page, right? So for SPFX client-side web part, we are using gulp and gulp bundle and gulp package solution command to have the package available. Now, if you look this folder structure, there will be some change when I'm going to use few commands. So there are to build this application, we have two options. We have to execute two steps. The first step is we need to create the Teams app manifest file, and that we will upload the side load into Microsoft Teams. I'll show you that how to upload it. And this is done by using the gulp task. The command is gulp manifest. So in here in the folder structure, it will create one folder called package, and we have this zip file available for us. So the first step is done. Now the second step is I have to run the gulp build, and it will create one more folder called dist, and this will transpile the solution into this folder dist. So it is still creating. It will take a while to create it, and once it is done, we have this folder dist. Yeah. So now we are done with the build the application. Now the question is, how should I run this in my local workbench, right? So if you see here, yeah, I just need to grab this name, tabs to tab, and I'm trying to open this in my local workbench. Localhost, the port number is 3007, and enter. No, something is not working. Yeah. Gulp, so I forgot to execute gulp, so then we have that option available for us. So this will allow me to open my local workbench and verify that how my tab will render and how it look like when it is actually rendering in the team. So I'm just pressing enter. Still not there. It is still linting. Okay, it is giving me some error. So let me open another solution which I already created. So I'll just go with this this solution and try to get the gulps of command run. It will take a while for creating this file. So here again I'm getting an error. I don't know what is missing. Okay, so once you have your tabs into teams, you can see that like, okay, just opening this kind of this is the tab I have created, right? So you just have to, I'll show you this tab that once you go to your teams management, from here manage teams, then go to apps and create this upload a custom app, and then you have to upload the solution zip file, and once you upload that it will be available here kind of like this, and then go to your channel and add new tab and select whatever the tab you have the solution you have uploaded, and that will be available for here. So now it is stopping because I was using that in my code. Execution was there, but somehow it is stopped. But you can see the tab content here, and it will same available when you deploy the actual solution in Microsoft Teams. So this is how you can create this Microsoft Teams tab using Yeoman Generator. Now I have another example which can explain that how to create this Microsoft Teams, this bots using Yeoman Generator. So for that I have already created one solution. This is my solution, my Teams bot. So how to create the bots? So before that, you just need to jump into the portal.azure.com first, and then so this is my Azure portal. So I'm just opening this in a duplicate screen, a duplicate tab. So first you have to create a resource. Then as of now we are creating the bot, so I'll search for bot channel registration. So select that and click on create. And here you have to pass the name of the bot. Let's say, for example, M365 UK 2020. And then you have to select the subscription, and you can select the resource group. So I'll select the already exist one, then the location, and here I'll select the freemium free version of the premium messages. I'll not go with this standard one. And here messaging endpoint, we can pass the value like once we create the solution, it in the tabs you remember azure.website.net has been created, so that's the endpoint. So generally it is kind of HTTPS, and let me open if I have that notes available with me. So HTTPS, then my teams bot dot Azure website.net/API/messages. So this is a kind of URL as of now I'm just giving, and I'm selecting the off for the application insights, and we'll use the Microsoft app ID and password with the auto create app ID and password. So I'm just clicking on the create. Once you click on the create, you will have this bot channel registration created for you, and then go to the settings, and then in the settings just copy this Microsoft app ID, right? So let me copy that and paste somewhere. So I'm just keeping this just because we need that ID when we are creating the solution. So the same way you have to create the solution where the way I have created the tabs, but the only difference is we just need to select bots instead of tab. And once you're done and done with the scaffolding, then your solution structure will look like this. It's the same structure, but the main difference is in the environment file, we are going to use this Microsoft app ID, which I have just copied. It's D8 something like that. It's the same one that I'm going to use for this bots development. And after that, we will set the password. So I'll show you that how to get the password for that. So once we have this information or the strings key and value available, you can just have it into your environment file, and then you just check which channel you want to use. So for now I have used Microsoft Teams channel, but if you are going to start from scratch, then you will have only web chat option available. So I have selected Microsoft Teams from add a feature channel, and then I have that connected to channels here as a Microsoft Teams. So it is running for me. Now after that, I just wanted to test like how the bot will respond. So you can select test in web chat from this screen only, and it will start responding based on your question. So this is the welcome screen, welcome card for me. Now I'm typing just hello, and it will respond with the oh hello to you as well. So this is written in my code, the default one. So this is how it will respond, and from here we can say that our bot is working as expected, right? Now we have to use this into the code. So how to get this now actual task is how to get this bot in Microsoft Teams. So for that we need Microsoft app password. So again we go to that screen, Azure portal, then go to your bot channel registration, then settings, and then you can click on this Microsoft app ID, click on manage, and we are going to create this secret ID and key. So I have already created for this called uTeams bot demo. If you want to create new and then just click on new client secret, so it will open the new window and ask you the name and the description, and then you have the value. So the same value I have used in my solution. Let me open that. So the password is this, right? So it directly communicate with this. My Microsoft app ID is this, and the password is this. Now, the most important thing is how do I check that this in Microsoft Teams or expose my IP addresses. So we have the facility to expose our IP address or create a temporary server using the ngrok. So we have the ngrok command available with us that help us to provide the temporary host name or the URL which can be used as a message endpoint. So in this case, you can see we have this. When I run this command, ngrok serve command, I'll get that hostname URL here. So I have to copy this URL and then go to your Microsoft this Azure portal, then select your bot channel registration settings, and here I have to pass that. Instead of your mybots.azure.azurewebsite.net, you have to replace that with your temporary hostname, which has been given by ngrok command execution. So we are good with that now. And then you have to open that. You can see the default port number is 3007. So let me open that in a local workbench. Yeah, so this will open like this, and we have the functionality to open or add these bots directly into the Teams. So we have the button called add to Teams. So once I click on add to Teams, it will open my desktop Teams application, or I can add that into my web interface of the Microsoft Teams. So for now, I have added into this test. Okay, let me open again. So click on add to Teams, and I'll open that use the web. Okay, so it is opening in my desktop version, and you can see the chat window is open. Now I'm just trying to sending a message to this bot has been disabled by your administrator. Okay, so let me open this in web browser instead of this. Yeah, so I'm just typing hello, and it should reply back with the oh hello to you as well. So this is how it will work for Microsoft Teams, and we can test from here as well. So there is no need to deploy and check how it will communicate with the question the user is asking, and how it will respond to the question has been asked for. So now for this adaptive cards or some kind of listing, you can use any kind of logic if you want. So this is how it is structured, and you can get test information from dialogues. Then these are the welcome cards. So you can change it as per your requirement. So this is the default structure of the solution or the project. Then you can change what type of information you want to have it. Like if I type in hello, then it will return with a oh hello to you as well. And this is a kind of condition. So you can have your own algorithm that how my bot will respond when someone asks the questions, or you can prepare something else and get the information from there too. Yeah, so this is all about that, and I think I have covered both the solution as a demo, and yeah, I'm okay to have the questions if any. Yeah, Chirag.
Hi, Kirti.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have one question,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a question from Sohail. Does it need, this was in the earlier part of the your demo. The question is, does it need to be installed globally, these NPM packages?
No, not required. You can create your folders anywhere. Like for example, if I have created this demo, right? So you can just use this and install your npm packages over there.
Okay, so you can create those folders.
Yes.
Anywhere.
Yeah. Because sometimes what happened, like if it is a question of the versioning, you are working on multiple projects and multiple solutions, and all the solutions have the different versions, or all the projects or the generator have the different versions. Then you can create a kind of folder structure where you can install your all the components using npm, because it is not easy to upgrade and downgrade the projects for different projects.
Right, with you.
Yeah.
And I think that was it. There's no more questions. So attendees, if you have any further questions or anything you would like Kirti to go through again in more detail, then please feel free to post them now. So we'll give you a kind of a minute or two.
Yeah, and if in case when you are trying to hands-on with this development, and if you find anything which needs me or any kind of input from my end, then you can definitely connect with me any social media platform, and I will be happy to help you in all the ways.
Yeah. So Kirti, I had a couple of questions, if I may. So you demonstrated the bots over there. In your kind of experience, what other bots example? Can you give some examples in the real world scenario type where you've developed some of these, please?
Yes, sure. So recently I'm working with one of the project which has a kind of requirement to it's a combination of SharePoint Online and document library. So pulling out the data from SharePoint document library to bots. So based on the questions which has been asked by the user, it will find the keyword, and it will crawl the SharePoint search and pull out the information or the document where that keyword is resides. So it will search from all the document throughout the document and get all the information for the user. So that is a kind of for the employee who joins newly in the company. So there is no need to interact with anyone to find the documents like leave documents and HR related documents. So that will be easy for the person who is new in the company, and without wasting the time, they have the interface that you just type in something and it will fetch all the documents which are already uploaded into the knowledge repository of the SharePoint document library.
Right. So the key repository of documents are stored in the SharePoint document library.
Yeah.
And then you got the work from the bots doing through the search, that is.
Yes.
So is that using Microsoft Search by any chance, or is that using?
Yes, Microsoft Search. We are using the REST API calls, and crawling is there as well. But we are using this REST API call to get the result based on the crawl. And then another bot I'm working with that is purely on this Azure Cognitive Services. That is for the this Q&A knowledge base. It's a similar kind of like solution, but in that case we are using the predefined set of question and answer.
Right. Okay. Is that using the Q&A maker?
Yes, Q&A maker. Yeah.
Okay.
Q&A maker.
Sorry, go on, carry on.
Yeah, it has been developed using Q&A maker.
Yeah, because I was going to say, because that seems to be a popular kind of a easy one to get started. But from an IT pro perspective, so for organizations who are rolling out, say, Microsoft 365, we know Microsoft Teams is kind of, if you like, getting rolled out pretty fast because of the current situations and everything else that's going on. Are there any selection of bots, like, because typically when I work with various organizations, the bot seems to be the buzzword for a lot of the
Correct.
IT folks, and they just want something to up and run quickly. And I know Q&A Maker is typically one of those bots to have that up and running in in no time.
Yeah.
Are there any other bots that you can think of which some organizations can potentially make use of, or can they go
Yeah.
to any particular library or templates available? Or...
Yeah. So as of now, as a developer community, we have a lot of bots available. So for one of the bots I developed, I used to have the webart, which allows us to just enter the ID,
Yeah,
and then you can have that bot in your SharePoint page as well. So here, like so this is I have deleted that, but this is a kind of solution which on which I'm talking about, like Q&A
yeah,
maker. So once you have your let me edit this page. So this is the direct line secret. So the ID you have to just pass here, and then you have some predefined appearance settings. So based on that, once you provide the direct line secret, then you can type in something and it will communicate with your knowledge base, what has been created for using the Q&A maker, and it will retrieve all the result set for the user.
right.
Yeah, so it is not necessary that bots only work in the Microsoft Teams, but sometimes the organization wants that I should have a bot in a SharePoint application from where user can just type in something and get all the information.
Sure. Okay. That looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Are you able to expand on the tabs? So, do you have any examples of other kind of tabs that you can develop,
Yes.
put them in the team channels,
Yes.
if you're able to, please?
Yeah, I'll just show you that. For one of the customer that I have created one Power Apps, and they want that the Power App should be open from Microsoft Teams as well. So let me see if I have
Okay.
that. Yeah. So this is the Power Apps which I have just created to get the consent for the user that uh, suggestion. We are getting the suggestion, and it's a flow kind of. Put
Okay.
the
Right.
information, and then it will notify the immediate approver, and then it will send an email notification. But the main thing is that there is a kind of glitch that everybody or every user is not able to open the SharePoint site and get into this and like update the add the information. So we come up
Right.
with this kind of option that we can use. Everyone is using Microsoft Teams, so we just thought that create the Power Apps and just embed that Power Apps into the tabs.
Yeah.
But this is out of the box. But the same way we have created these Power Apps, you can use kind of development using this Yo Teams instead
Right.
of this default messages or buttons. You can just create this same interface kind of application and have something for the user to communicate with.
Right. So still using the power of Teams, basically, isn't it? Keeping the users inside of Teams and
Yes.
instead of taking them away into SharePoint or any other
Yeah.
areas.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I think that's great, Kirti. Really appreciate great session.
Yeah.
Good demos. Kind of thoroughly went through it. So very good one on that one. And obviously, thanks for sharing those examples as well. So hopefully our attendees can take some things away from that. And if you're able to post the slides or any codes or samples or anything like that, then please feel free to share that, and we will obviously make them available. And I'll post the links in the Q&A section shortly, so the attendees can navigate to them easily.
Yeah, sure. I'll share with you that code and PPT as well, both files.
Sure, that's great. Okay, well, listen, I think just want to say big thanks. It's pretty late in India. It's around what, I think 9 o'clock or 9:15, I think. So really appreciate for giving up your time to be with us. And so hopefully we'll catch online at some event somewhere on the planet. So yeah, no, thanks very much, and take care. And if you're staying around, which will be nice, then if there is any additional questions, then hopefully I can pass them to you. But yeah, thanks, Kirti. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Chirag. Thank you for this opportunity and having me, and allow me to share whatever I know about. As I'm very passionate, same like you, just to share whatever I know with the community and help the community in all possible ways.
Nah, just good stuff.
Yeah.
Every little helps. So
correct.
It's great to be here. Great, thanks. So, okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a break. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So we're had Kirti Prajapati in the first session on getting started with your teams, which was an excellent session. And so we will be sharing slides later on. But for the second session, we now have Albert Hoitingh from the Netherlands. So big thanks to Albert for giving up his time to be here. Welcome, Albert. And Albert's going to be talking about the sensitivity labels in Office 365 with news and updates. So pretty much all the latest and the greatest. So here we are. Albert, take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chirag. Well, thanks to you, or welcome to you who are watching this session right now. I'm very happy to be here, be it virtually or virtually now with all the COVID crisis going on. But then again, there's always time to share knowledge and expertise, I guess, and that's what I was going to do for the next 3/4 of an hour, somewhat. My name is Albert Hoitingh, and I'll just start sharing my screen with you. Let me take this one. Okay, now you see my agenda. That's not really the thing I wanted to share, so let me just... I'm a solution architect in Office 365, which basically means I still struggle with things like Teams, as you might notice already. But here we go. Yeah, this is the one. So I'm Albert Hoitingh. I'm a solution architect from the Netherlands. I work for a small company called Motion 10. And one of my main areas of expertise and also interest is information protection, information management, all to do with Microsoft technology, mostly Office 365. I also look at things like Azure and sometimes even Amazon as well. So what's it about? What are we going to do in the next 30 minutes, 35 somewhat? I want to look at sensitivity labels. And we've got a lot of cool new stuff coming out of Redmond this year. A lot of this stuff has been announced during Ignite. Last Ignite 2019, but when it was announced, it was still more or less in a private preview or beta form or anything like that. And a lot of new functionality has come out, and I want to share that with you today. I'll be demoing it as well. A lot of the things I'll be talking about, I will be demoing it. So yeah, please hold on and just wait and see. So first of all, before I go into any demos or any new stuff, I want to share with you some of the the background of what's now called Microsoft Information Protection or Unified Labeling or Azure Information Protection, it has a history. And right now, let's take a look how that, where we're coming from. Basically, where we're coming from is from Azure Information Protection. And that's been around for a couple of years right now. It started a couple of years ago with Azure Right Management being enhanced by a product by a little firm called Secure Islands, and that was the birth of Azure Information Protection. It required a client you could install, mostly on Windows, for example. It also created an add-on within Office, and then with those add-ons, you've got those little labels which you could use to protect, encrypt your information. You could also apply a watermark. And there's a lot of other functionality which basically made information classification, data classification very easy for your end users. You see it over here, by the way. I've got PowerPoint not in the presentation mode, but in the bookmark mode, and you see my little labels over here as well. These are, well, likely to be called the more classic label functionality. By the way, if you're still using it, you still can use it, of course. It will be deprecated in the first quarter of next year. So please be aware of that. Also, to be more precise, if you look at the clients which are being used for information protection, you've got a 1.0 or 1.x version of the client. If you have that client available or rolled out for your users, then you're still using Azure Information Protection Classic. The 2.x version, that's the sensitivity labels and the unified labelings, and that's the one of the next versions. If we look at more enhancements to the Classic, we've got more content sources which became available to be able to scan using either an on-premise scanner, which allowed you to scan your file shares or your SharePoint on-premises environment. You also had an integration with Cloud App Security, which is a cloud access and security broker platform from Microsoft, which also allowed you to scan things like Dropbox or Google Drive, if you could access those, of course. And Adobe integration was also coming, and that's still within the Azure Information Protection landscape. Not too long ago, Microsoft moved to what they call the unified labeling or sensitivity labels. Sensitivity labels, first of all, was like a name change, because first the client for information protection was used to be known as the confidentiality label or button, and now it was the sensitivity button, because, well, we're talking about sensitivity basically, and not a level of protection. So that was a name change. It also moved from the Azure Information Protection Portal, which is in Azure, to the Security and Compliance Center, and it became integrated with your Office environment. So you got your labels within Office 365, for example, or, well, to be very exact, Microsoft 365. Like I stated earlier with the other client, to be able to use those sensitivity labels, you had to have the client 2.x, and those did not work together. So if you were using the 1.x version of the client, you were using Azure Information Protection and you were talking to that backend. If you're using 2.x version of the client, then you were talking to the sensitivity label backend. Under the hood, they would talk to each other. So if you created a label in Azure Information Protection, it would move, or, well, basically be copied to the sensitivity labels as well. That's basically where we are today. We have the unified labeling or the sensitivity labels. Unified labels, by the way, wasn't meant to be as like we've got one label to rule them all, for example. No. In Microsoft 365, you now have two labels. You've got a retention label and you've got a sensitivity label. The unified bit was mostly how the information systems at the back end processed confidential information, sensitive information. It was unified. If you're using Cloud App Security, or you were using Microsoft 365 functionality, or even Azure Information Protection, it still uses the same sensitive information types, for example. One of the other things which came out using those sensitivity labels was Windows information protection, which allowed you to have protection on Windows 10. For example, if you try to move a document or email a document using Gmail, which was labeled, then the sensitivity labels would prevent that, for example. And now in 2019, during Ignite, a lot of new stuff was announced. We've got Office Online integration, Office Pro Plus integration, site classifications, auto classification. One of the things which was shown, but which I can't show you right now because I haven't seen it yet, is the information panel in Office. I can talk about it. It's an information panel which shows you why a document is deemed to be sensitive, for example. Because probably we all know that using a sensitivity label, you can have auto classification, and then the user gets prompted to either classify it using a specific label, or the label will become mandatory. But you never knew basically why did the policy act that way, and the info panel will give you that information. But it hasn't been released yet. I haven't seen it as yet. Some of these things which I'm going to show you in a couple of minutes were really game changers, because one of the things, the Office Online integration, for example, finally solved an issue. And well, if you're using Azure Information Protection right now, you might have noticed that if you protect a document and you share it or you store it in either OneDrive or in SharePoint Online, or either in Teams, which is also using SharePoint Online, of course, then the document won't be able to open in a web browser. It won't be searched. It cannot be searched. It won't be indexed used for e-discovery, for example. The reason why Azure Information Protection uses an encryption technology which, well, is not the same as all the other Microsoft technologies. And that is, well, we can probably, one of the reasons for that is because of that Secure Island purchase some years ago. But that has been solved, and now we can really use Office Online as well for encrypted documents, for example. So let me go into some depth at the new functions. Most of these are already general available. Might be that some are public preview. I have a link in the description or in the PowerPoint at the end of this session, and you can follow that link to get more information and even to unroll your tenant for the preview functions if they're still in preview. So first of all, the Office Online integration. Yeah, it provides a couple of functions. First of all, you've got the sensitivity column in Office Online, so and the button as well, so you can really classify your documents as they are opened within Office Online. Please do note Office Online, PDF, CAD-CAM, Visio, all other. Well, Visio might be a little bit on the side, but if it isn't a Word, PowerPoint, or Excel, then it won't work for at this moment. So please take a note of that. You also get the sensitivity label as a column within SharePoint, which is cool, which was, by the way, already available, like I think 2 years ago. If you were looking at your site columns within SharePoint, you would notice that there was a sensitivity label or a sensitivity column, but it didn't do anything. And right now it really does work. There are some notes for those sensitivity labels in Office Online right now. First of all, there's no way to change the label within a library. So even though you get the label as a column, there's no way to manipulate that column using your metadata, for example. There's no default label option, but at the end of this presentation, I will show you or talk about the auto classification options. And I'm not sure if it's still the case, but I think it is. The co-authoring using, for example, an Office app and Office Online will be disabled when you're using a classification label, which is used to encrypt a document. They're still working on that to really get that co-authoring working. Probably they solved it already, but when I tested it not too long ago, it was still an issue that you couldn't really co-author a document when using the different types of Office options you have. So this is a really big thing because to be clear, if you're sharing a document which has been classified with an external party, for example, they really don't need to have the Office add-ins installed as well, because they now can open those documents within the browser as well if they are entitled to by the label, for example. So let me just show you. Let me just get a little demo environment up and running. Yep, here it is. Let me go to a SharePoint site. I've got a SharePoint site over here, and what you will notice probably, and let me just delve a little deeper, is I've got documents over here. I've got folders over here. I've got my sensitivity column over here. I also use a retention label, which is this one over here. And you see a lot of documents which have already got a sensitivity label. So this is the column which you see works right now. And one option I have to talk about is if you have a folder, for example, you can also, sorry, I want to talk about retention labels now. I'll just mention it, just a little tip. If you're using retention labels and you have a folder, you can set a retention label on that folder, and then any document in that folder will get the same retention label. Just a little tip of the site, because we're talking about sensitivity. Sorry about that. And one of the first things I'm going to do, I'm going to open this document over here. As you see, it's called an Aip Protected Document, and this is one of those classic documents. Using Azure Information Protection, I've classified it. You probably noticed that it doesn't have any sensitivity label over here, because again, it's one of those classic documents. And if I try to open it, some might recognize the error I now get. Well, it's sorry, can't open this in the browser, it's being protected, etc., etc. This was the way it used to work, even if you were using those sensitivity labels which were integrated in Office 365. And that's been solved right now. So let me just go, for example, to another, like this one, another credit card document, and I open that one. Well, this is just a little thing I got from the internet. Yep. And here you see, has been protected by a policy. Well, that's not as much the sensitivity label right now. That's a data loss prevention policy I've got set up. But here at the bottom, you see highly confidential financial information. That's the label. What I've done, and I'll get back to that in a couple of minutes. I've got an auto classification scheme which looks for credit cards and well, labels that kind of information. And this one has been labeled, and you see that over here. So this one is really now encrypted within Office 365. Within Office Online, I've got the labels themselves over here. I've got a couple of labels. I've got a lot of demo stuff over here, of course. And if I go to public, for example, then you'll see the data label has been applied as well. So let me just, it has been saved. So let me just go back to the demo. Remember, this is called an other credit card document. So let's go there. And over here, it has been changed. You'll notice as well that it now states has been manually labeled. Well, the other version for this is, of course, that it has been automatically labeled, and we'll get into that in a couple of minutes. So this is one of the cool stuff, using those sensitivity labels now in Office 365. You really don't have to do much to really start working with this. There's a PowerShell commandlet. If it's not enabled on your tenant, you can run that commandlet, and then it will be enabled for your tenant. It's really fast, and then you can really work with your encrypted and protected documents from any any browser actually. So let me just show you how that works, for example, in Excel as well. Here it is, some credit card information, and over here I still have my sensitivity. Let me say this is like a Teams confidential, for example. You'll see over here, Teams confidential. Well, there are a couple of things which you might notice, by the way. How do I clear the label? Well, very easily. I just go like this, and then the label's gone. I don't see any option to have the label in the bar, for example. It's just this this user interface, and there's no options as well. It's just the labels and just a little icon called sensitivity. So that's how that works. It's now available, so I definitely look at that because that's really well, in my case, it's really a cool new feature. Another thing which also, well, is very cool in my opinion, is the option not to just use a label to classify documents, but also to classify the container where those documents are stored. And you can use that now within Office or Microsoft 365, and that's called a site classification. Well, some of you might already know that those site classifications have been around for some time. You could use Azure Active Directory to set a list of classifications, and they would show up at the top of your site, for example, or in your Teams environment. Problem was they didn't do really much. They're basically you could have a URL pointing the user to some more information on the label, but that was it. But now really we do have some options based on that label. For one, you can really label your Teams environment, which also labels the SharePoint site at the backend, for example. You can also label an Office group, but yeah, I'm not really sure Office or Microsoft 365 groups, as they're now known, are really used functionally, by the way. But when you do, some things take effect. One of the things is that it allows a default setting for the privacy of the site or the Teams environment, and it also allows how external access is managed. And I'll just show you that in a couple of seconds. One of the other things is how a SharePoint site or a Teams environment should act when it's being accessed by a mobile device. And that's really cool because most of you probably are aware of the option that you can have site collection based conditional access. So if you have really sensitive information stored in a site collection, you might want to have conditional access based on that site collection. For example, disallow downloading of documents by people coming with a non-managed device, for example. Well, that's been possible for quite some time, but it really did take some effort. For example, you had to use PowerShell and you had to set all the actions. You had to have all different conditional access rules for that. But now it's basically, you need the label, the sensitivity label. You also need a conditional access rule. And both of them together, they will allow you to, based on that sensitivity label, modify the behavior or when a site is accessed or a Teams environment is accessed when using a non-managed device. Before I show you that, one really important message, although a sensitivity label does affect the documents, setting a label on a container, like a SharePoint site, for example, does not automatically affect the documents stored in that container. You might think that if you would, provide a label to a site, let's call it confidential, then any document within that site would be automatically classified as confidential, which, well, makes sense, basically, but Microsoft isn't quite there yet. They're working on it. It's still on user voice, I think, as an option. Right now, it's not there. We do have that automatic classification I'll be getting at in a couple of minutes, but that really isn't the same functionality. So keep that in mind. The things I'm going to show you right now do not affect the documents in the site. Okay, let's take a look. And for that, I'm just you might notice I'm looking up because that's where my other screen is. Just to give you a heads up for that. Over here, I have my labels. You already noticed perhaps here's the auto labeling stuff. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But first of all, let me get a site label. I've got several, well, basically 2 labels which have got some settings configured for that. One of them is that Teams Confidential label, and I'll just open it. And if it's, yeah, there it is. Okay. Well, over here you already see the site and group settings. And let me just edit those, because I'll just show you what this label does. Well, first of all, we've got all the, well, specific options for the label, like the naming, a description, etc. I can also use this label for documents, of course, because that is really the way to integrate this with the documents. Apply it to the container, and then using a policy, assign it to the people in the same group, for example, so they can use the same label to protect the documents. So over here, I've got my encryption settings. I've got all my authenticated users with some custom permissions. All my users within my domain, this is my domain name, have co-authoring rights, because, well, this is a kind of label which isn't that confidential. So I'm sure that all my users need to have co-authoring rights. And, well, these are, well, very basic settings, of course. I don't have any content marking. Should I want to, I can, of course, add a watermark, header and footer to any document. I don't want to right now, because I want to get over here. And over here you see the site and group settings. So these are the settings which manipulate your site when it's being created or when the label is being applied to this site or to this Teams environment. Well, there's 3 settings basically. I've got the privacy, which is either public, private, or none. And in this case, and I'll just demo it in a couple of seconds how it works, I'll set it to private only. I don't want any external access to the site as well. So I'll just leave this blank as well. And when people come with an unmanaged device, I will allow access to the documents, for example, but they can have only web-only access. I can also block the access entirely, which I did when, well, preparing for this session, which allowed me to, well, block all my demo sites, which is, well, kind of proof that it worked, I guess. So I just set it back to the allow limited version. So these are my settings for this label. And I'll just cancel out of this because, well, I haven't changed anything. And I'll just go back to the name first. This one is called Teams Confidential. So let's see what happens if I go, for example, to, let me go to Teams. Oh, this is a little sidestep. My Teams environment is being monitored by Cloud App Security. That's why you see a little screen over here. And what I want to do right now is just to show you how that would look when we are, for example, creating a new team. So I'm going to create a new team from scratch. So I'll just say over here, and again from scratch. And over here, I've got my sensitivity label. And as you might notice already, I've got all the different privacy settings still available. But when I go to Teams Confidential, for example, you'll see that all those settings will will disappear. So this is how when I go back, this is the only one I can select. If I just complete this wizard, then there will be a Teams environment created with the settings based on that label. So there's no external sharing to the Teams environment. The site, the SharePoint site, and the Teams environment itself will also be labeled using the label. And there's also going to be a conditional access rule based on the SharePoint site, which is coupled to this Teams environment. All that just by selecting a label. So I think that's really a cool enhancement Microsoft brought to the sensitivity labels, because this is, well, very, very easy to do instead of using all those PowerShell commandlets and, well, don't knowing where or when anything has been labeled. Okay, I'll just discard this. But One of the things we also need, if we are going to use this label to manipulate the way devices will interact with this environment, we still need to do something in Azure AD. And I'll just show you that. It's a little sidestep from the labels, but it really is important. So I'll just log in again to my Azure environment. Because what does this label do? This label has a setting enabled which says web-only access. The web-only access option will be added to your site collection attributes, if you will. Any site collection within SharePoint Online has a lot of attributes. Things like, is it being allowed to share with externals? What's the quota? What's the site administrator, etc., etc. It's kind of a long list, and one of those attributes is also conditional access. And it's that conditional access property by the site collection which is being passed on to Azure Active Directory when a user tries to log on. Well, if that user tries to log on and there is a policy, then that attribute will be read, and if it states web only, then the user will be prompted with web only. But we do need a conditional access policy for that, because otherwise it won't work. You can try it out, you can create your labels, you can add them to sites, etc. You'll notice using any client whatsoever, it won't have any effect until you create such a conditional access policy. And I'll just show you, it's very, well, relatively simple. I'll just show you how it works. A conditional access policy in Azure AD basically built out of two containers. First of all, we've got the assignments, or who should this policy affect, and then okay, what kind of rules do we need to be put into place? Over here, I've got my assignment set to all users. I've got one app, which is SharePoint Online. I could also have Teams, the entire Office Online suite, etc. In my case, I only have SharePoint Online, and I don't have any conditions. This is basically because this is a demo environment, which I can just turn on and off again. But you see all the kind of conditions I can have. For example, if a user comes from a location I do not trust, for example, the Starbucks, just to name an example, I can configure that as a non-trusted location. And then this policy will come into effect. I don't have any conditions right now. I'm just skipping them. And then I get to the access controls. And for the labels to work, you only need one specific access control, and that's the session-based access control. And that's the one over here. Use the app enforced restrictions. Basically, what this does is the app, in this case, is SharePoint Online. It has specific restrictions, namely the attribute in the site collection, and it will read that attribute and then enforce the restrictions. For example, do not download or web only. So that's how basically those labels need to be configured. For those labels to work in SharePoint Online, by the way, you only need one conditional access policy, and that's over here. Unless, of course, you're going to exclude any users or have different conditions or whatever. But in basic, if you want to test it out, there's only one conditional access policy required. Okay, so that's how it works for a label based on on a site or a site collection or a team environment. If you want to look at how are my sites doing, have they been labeled, you can go to the SharePoint Admin Center over here, and there's a new column in this Admin Center as well, and that's called sensitivity. Of course, makes sense. And what you see over here is I've got a lot of site collections already. Most of them are modern team sites, and some of them have those specific labels applied to them. Because my Active Directory conditional access policy isn't active right now, I can't show you right now how that works. But if it should that Active Directory policy been active, then I would have noticed a little yellow bar or either an error message denying me access to my environment, for example. So these are the things you can do with the labels based on the sensitivity labels as related to SharePoint site and Teams. Again, I still need to reiterate, I think it still doesn't affect any documents in your team, group or site. Okay, what else was there? Yeah, data classification at rest. This is really new. The things I just showed you, the sensitivity labels in Office Online and the sensitivity labels as being applied to a container were also announced at Ignite, but were relatively quick for preview available. This one did take some time, and what it does is if you wanted to classify your information or either scan your information in SharePoint Online, for example, there was only one option basically, and it was using Cloud App Security. Problem with Cloud App Security is it does require a very healthy or hefty license. I think it's included in Microsoft 365 E5, for example. It's very a very heavy function, and it's more than just being used for classifying your information in the cloud, for example. It's a very comprehensive environment. So right now you don't need that anymore, because that the data classification at rest will allow you to scan and classify your information stored in the primary parts of Office 365, Exchange, SharePoint Online, and OneDrive for Business, for example. It's based on the DLP engine of 365, which in turn is using the search environment within SharePoint Online and OneDrive, and in Exchange it's using another concept or algorithm. But basically what it does, it searches for the confidentiality, sensitivity of your information. If it's if any document is found using that algorithm, then a label will be applied. There are some snags to that. For example, not if you already have a label which has a higher classification, and the auto classification engine will prompt for a lower classification, then it won't apply that label, because always the higher classification wins and the lower classification loses, for example. So there are some snags, but in the end it will work. One of the things I did notice when trying this out in preview is that it really takes some time to become active. Even though most of the things in SharePoint Online or Office 365 do take some time, but mostly it's like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something like that. This really can take up to 24 hours to become active. It really does take some time. In the meantime, you can look at the simulation mode, which shows you how far the indexing is getting along and how it's finding any information. So, having said that, let's look at how that works. It's to be found again within your information protection part of Microsoft 365. And if we go to auto labeling, there you'll find your auto labeling policies. Okay, there's a couple of them over here. I've got some of them already running, and one is on and the other one is off. You will notice that there are some functions which aren't working just perfectly yet. Microsoft did announce that, or promise us basically, that if you access for example, this one, a already running policy, you will get an overview of the same overview you get within the simulation overview, which isn't the case. I only, if it stops loading, I'll just see my configuration of the policy, which, well, is cool, and I see that it's running, but I really want to have more information on that. And if I go to this one, for example, this is one policy I created earlier, and this one is still in the simulation mode. The simulation mode is really used to fine-tune your policy, because it must be said, it might be a very scary thing to do, to automatically classify your information and to label it if you are starting to use encryption as well, of course. So there are some safeguards for that. I think there's a number of documents which can be automatically classified during a specific time frame, for example. But the simulation mode is one of the things you can use as well to look if the policy is well the thing you think it should be. Right now, well, in my case, it's still running. I do have 2 matches, but it hasn't gotten through all the environments yet. So let me just see what the information is. That has been found, and I'll get an overview in a couple of seconds. This shouldn't normally take long. There it is. Okay, well, you see a credit card. It also has the, and I'll just show you what this policy looks like. Over here, I've got the information. I've got the modification date. It also includes the built-in sensitive information types. So I've got an overview of that as well. And if I go any deeper within the document, it will show you. Well, it doesn't have a preview. Okay, no problem. I'll just over here, I've got the metadata of the file. So you see there's a lot of information the system produces for you to really see if this policy is correct. And let me just show you how this policy looks like. If there's anyone over here in this session right now which that already uses, for example, data loss prevention policies, then you will notice a lot of similarities. Again, it's based on that the DLP engine as well. So let me just show you over here. Well, this already is a very well. This looks the same. The locations. I've got 2 sites, SharePoint, and over here I've got my rules. And this really is very familiar for the DLP people. So let me just edit it, and you'll see this rule editor is basically exactly the same as the DLP rule editor. I can have content, in my case, a credit card number, well, which is accurate because that's what the system found already. I can have any other sensitive information types added, and that's one of the other things you might notice. These are the only things I can add to this auto classification rule. There's no rec edit or keywords or whatever. I can only use those sensitive information types. So if I have any information I want to automatically classify using sensitive information types, and I don't have that from the default, then there's only one thing to do, and that's create your own sensitive information type. Well, I can have one of the things which I did notice when I was doing this preview was because it's based on the DLP rule, I can also have a content is shared action. So I can even auto classify information based on the action, not just the sensitive information type itself, but also when content is shared. So when I'm done with this, I can, well, yeah, I won't save it right now, but then I can say, okay, this is the rule I'm happy with. Which label do you need to apply? Okay, in my case, that's this one. And well, and then you get the overview. I can turn it off, or I can run it in simulation mode, which you already saw. This one is already running in simulation mode, and when it's gone, normally that really does take 24 hours. You can turn on the classification. Weird thing is, because the simulation did take some time, turning it on really instantaneously, well, nearly all your information which applies to that rule will be labeled with the label. So that's really quick when the label policy is active. Creating one does take some time. So let me just show you, and I already did, by the way, in the demo environment. Over here, I've got my sensitivity labels, and if you have that auto classification up and running, you will see that you get a little pop-up stating if the label has been applied manually. Most of them are, and some of them have been applied automatically. In my case, that's correct because I have a rule which allows or sets this label based on credit card information, which this one definitely will have. Yep, there it is again. So this is relatively new. Unfortunately, it probably will be only available if you have the compliance add-in license for Microsoft 365, or well, going full-blown to the E5 license model of Microsoft 365, because it uses automatic classification, and nearly anything to do with automatic classification or detection is the more valuable license right now. So this is how this works for auto classification. There were some hiccups, but now I think it's really working. Again, it's only for the Office 365 components, Exchange, SharePoint Online, and OneDrive for Business, of course. But in the end, it really does work very well. So one of the things I also want to show you is trainable classifiers. It's not as much part of information protection, but I think it was very worthwhile to show you that as well. Trainable classifiers, I already told you those sensitive information types. That's part of that unified labeling experience. You've got at least, I think, 150 of the built-in sensitive information types, and they go from a passport number to health information to IP address information, for example. But they're still relatively static. They're based on regex values, for example, or keywords, or document fingerprinting, or whatever. But it hasn't been, the system doesn't learn anything from that. And the trainable classifiers do. So if you have, for example, a very large set of documents or content which you already know needs to be classified by, let's say, it's like an invoice, for example, because that's a very, a very easy example. Then you can learn your system to create a classifier called, invoice, for example. Those trainable classifiers can then be used in things like data loss prevention policies. You can have them there as well. They will become available for auto classification, for example, for a lot of functions within Microsoft 365. Those trainable classifiers will become available. Again, it's part of the more extensive license, of course, for Microsoft, because it's still Microsoft, I guess. So that's one thing to take into account. But let me just show you something how that works. Trainable classifiers. It already says here it's still in preview. When you start using it, you need to enable it within your tenant, and when you enable it, you get at least 5, I think. Here they are, 6 ready to use trained classifier or classifiers you can use to train. So if you have things like information based on which you need to classify as threats, then you can train the system to start using this classifier, for example. There's another 5 of them as well. I've got one as well here. It's factuur, which is the Dutch word for invoice. And if I go there, you'll see that what it says over here. The procedure to use this is, first of all, you need to really test your classifier. And unfortunately, the system doesn't take that lightly. So don't just add 10 documents to test this out. Like you see over here in my demo, I really needed more than 900 items to really have that engine warmed up and starting to classify the information. Then when you're done, then the system will ask you to review items, just to filter out any false positives, for example. And if you're happy with that, then you can really publish the classifier. Based on the learning model right now, I've got an accuracy of 99.5%, which is very high. And in my case, I can easily just now publish the classifier, and then it will become available within Microsoft 365 to either use for retention, data loss prevention, or in the end, even information protection. So this is very, very new. I'm still trying to get my fingers around it. How does it work in more depth? Okay, now it has been published. Okay, cool. And now I can use it. So this is one of the things, again, relatively new. I really stimulate you to look at it as well. And then, yeah, this is really starting to use machine intelligence, because let's face it, a lot of information, we're currently storing that much information within Office 365 that it's really, for a human, is barely able to do manually a classification, basically. So that those trainable classifiers are really helpful on that. Okay, now I'm over here and looking at the time, I'll just show you another quick couple of things. Those are over here. One of the things which within the environment you might want to know is where is my content stored? How sensitive is it? Who's accessing it, etc. And those are over here. So let me just go to the Content Explorer. And this is one of the last things I'll show you coming from Ignite right now. Over here, you got a very cool overview of your content. Like I said, my environment is really small. But let's see, I've got a Teams Confidential, two labels. If I go there, you'll see the number here is also represented. So really like a Windows Explorer, I can really browse through my Office 365 environment. Where is that sensitive content? Why is it being labeled, etc., etc. So from a content manager perspective, this is really helpful for, well, determining where is that sensitive information. So over here, I've got my credit card information, sensitive information type, which has been used, etc., and even the retention label, which was applied to that. Okay. Yeah, those are basically the things I wanted to show you. The Content Explorer, Activity Explorer as well. I'll just skip that, but yeah, I think the name really does speak for itself on this. What you can do with the Activity Explorer. If you want to learn more, this slide deck is of course being shared. One of these days, there is a lot of information, of course, on docs.microsoft.com on this, including all the preview functions I talked about. There's a lot more coming this year, by the way, but some of that hasn't been made public yet. So wrapping that up, are there any more questions for me on this subject?
Thank you, Albert. That was a great session. Love the demos. So well done.
Thank you.
And yeah, we got a couple of questions. I think, in fact, one of them you've probably answered, but I think it'll be beneficial for the attendees to still get the answer if that's okay.
Sure.
So that's a question from Peter Rising. Have you had the chance to test the new container level features of sensitivity labeling in Teams, groups, and SharePoint, and any thoughts on use cases?
Yeah, well, I think the most important use case is if you really have that sensitive information stored, like yeah, let me rephrase. Let's say you're using Teams to collaborate with an external party, and the information there is really highly confidential. For example, you create a label for that. Now you really can add that label to the Teams site as well, and without any fault, any security measures will be enabled. For example, just web-only access or no external sharing. And of course, there's always a backdoor, and then an admin can do things which he or she shouldn't do, of course, but yeah, I think that's really one of the most easy use cases to have that sensitive information, not just the information being labeled by that label, but also the container itself. Yeah. And you can start playing with that. You can have like for example, yeah, just the privacy setting and the external access, for example, and just really see how that works, and then move on to well, managing the devices, for example. So yeah, there's a lot of use cases. I think I'm still working on creating a relative use case on that sensitive information to share on the blog I write. So well, I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, that's great. No, thanks, Albert. Now, so we've got a second question from Sohail. a more general question, considering there are limits such as co-authoring with applying labels, would you recommend auto-labeling, or you would say don't enable encryption?
Well, I think the co-authoring thing will be solved in the end. Perhaps it's even being solved right now. When I started testing this out, which was like when it became in private preview in the beginning of this year, that was still an issue. If you open the document within the web browser, both with multiple people at the same time, there's really no problem. If someone else tries to open the document, for example, with the Word app on Windows, then you notice that the co-authoring broke, and then it's something to do with that interoperability with those apps. So I think having those labels and that encryption option now available within Office Online, there's really no real there's no real reason not to use those labels and use those encryption options, because let's say a year ago, if you started to collaborate with external parties and you labeled your documents and you stored them on the SharePoint site, and people tried to access them, then either they had to install a client, or they had to install a viewer, or they got those error messages. And right now it's no problem. You just open Word Online and it works. So no, I don't think there's any. I think the co-authoring thing was a real big issue at least a year ago, but right now I don't think it's that much of an issue. I did wanted to mention it because it's very honest, I think, but I don't think it's really a big issue.
No, that's great. I think it is getting a lot easier, and obviously Microsoft have come a long way to try and give that the real unified experience around this, because I still get with my clients, in terms of the confusion between information governance and information protection, the labels and settings you go through, and it can be a bit confusing just to navigate your way around. But no, good, that's great. So I'm going to have to probably leave it at that, if that's okay, Albert. So
no
thanks
problem
for the questions, and really appreciate for taking your time to be here at Microsoft 365 UK user group.
Great to be here.
Thanks, and hopefully we'll meet again at some event.
I hope.
Online event. Good. And also big thanks to Kirti earlier on, who was with us presenting, get started with the Yo teams as well. So both of you, once again, thanks very much. And attendees, I've posted the links for the feedback. It'll be really helpful if you can provide us the feedback for both Albert and Kirti, because it really helps them to tailor and their presentations and everything else. So would really appreciate that. And hopefully by Friday, you will have access to the slides and the session recording as well. So look out for those links. I've posted in the Q&A on YouTube, and the slides as well. So with that, I'd just like to say a quick update for next time. So we have Thomas Wachten and Jasper Osterweld from Belgium and the Netherlands, two popular good old friends as well, been out there for a long time. So they'll be with us next month on the 12th of August, talking about getting started with Git and GitHub for the reluctant IT pro, which is a very good session, and lots been obviously updated, a lot of tools within that, but also governance with and Microsoft Teams. So again, governance is very much hot topic, depending on who you speak to or what time of the year it is as well. So hopefully you can make it. But until then, thanks very much for joining us today, and be safe. Take care. Thanks, everyone.